Hello and happy Wellness Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the IDCA Wellness for Tech podcast. Today, we're going to be speaking with Rinki Sethi, who's currently the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at BIL, where she'll be leading the global information technology functions and protect assets while enhancing innovations in the security space. Rinki brings decades of security and technology leadership expertise and was recently VP and CISO at Twitter and Rubrik. She's been at the forefront of developing cutting-edge online security infrastructure at several Fortune 500 companies such as IBM, Palo Alto, eBay, Walmart, and a slew of others. She led an initiative to develop the first set of national cybersecurity badges and curriculum for the Girl Scouts of USA, which I find fascinating. So I am so grateful to have Rinki on our podcast episode today. Welcome, Rinki. We are thrilled to have you.
So excited to be here. Thanks, Jothi.
All right, well, let's jump right in. I'm sure our audience would love to hear all about how your internal wellness from a mind, body, and energy perspective factors into the external environments that you've been involved in, especially in the technology field. Can you tell us, in your role or maybe even previous roles that you've been in, how have you fostered and empowered staff, whether staff directly working for you or around you, to prioritize their health and wellness over all else?
Yeah, I think it starts, for me, it started with me first, right? I wouldn't say I really cared about my health and fitness and my mental state much, especially earlier in my career. And it was like just about work, and, driving career. And I have two little kids. I had two little kids at home. So it was like family and trying to balance. And then as I've gotten older, I've realized that, you take on more stressful roles, and, the landscape around a CISO has completely changed, right? It's transformed and it's so different today than it was when I first started my career. And so I've had to take those breaks. And so for me, it's been really important to exercise. I think for the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, been really dedicated. I don't skip my own exercise time, whether it is in the morning, which is most of the time. That time is sacred to me. And that's what helps me be sane and kind of calm throughout the day. I also think it's really important to take breaks and take vacations and have that time to unplug. What a break is or what it is to kind of step away from things is different for everybody. But I think talking about this is what I do to take breaks, to stay sane, to stay calm, to make sure my stress levels are manageable is really important. And then saying I'm taking vacation, team, and taking those breaks often, sharing that with the team makes it so it's normal and they feel comfortable doing that too, especially in the world we live in on unlimited PTO, which can be kind of, okay, when can I take it type mentality. I think it's really important to share with the team that I take breaks, I take vacations. It's important that you do too.
That is great. So do you take breaks like throughout the day, or do you wait till you work during the weekdays and you kind of wait for a particular time in the week or maybe even a month to take breaks?
For me, so the way I describe my daily breaks is exercise is so important to me. And so I do make a time, like at least 30 to 45 minutes every morning, because I know if I don't get it done in the morning, my day's going to get past me and I'm going to be too tired or whatever. So to me, that's my time. There's days that there's exceptions to that. And then I'll make time somewhere else. Sometimes I think about like, can I do this meeting while I'm taking a walk? And so whether I go to the office and we decide to go on a walk, or whether I'm at home and I decide to take a call. And then I think for me also, then it's recognizing I'm stressed and I just need to step away for a little bit, or, something that I need to think about more and I need to step away. So that it can range from anything from exercise to these short little, I need to walk away or break away for a second, to it's time for a vacation. So, and I don't think it's not, oh, I'm so stressed, I need a vacation now. It's building that into the plan and building it into whatever it is. That might mean like I'm just planning time with my family, but having those frequently baked in, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's great. And you said you have two kids. I have three of my own, and that can be you know, fulfilling, but also time consuming. And it's even trying to, how do you take breaks while you have your kids around? I've come to practice that art myself, or being a single mom is kind of hard sometimes, because you go to work, you come back, and you have to take care of your kids, and it feels like you're just constantly on the go. And I've learned for myself to take breaks while I have the kids. Now they're 6, 9, and 12. I can kind of put them in, and I don't have, they're not babies I have to carry around. It's like, okay, well, I need 10 minutes. I'm going to go to my room and lock myself in there while I do my meditation or whatever, and just don't burn the house down or kill each other. And that's all. I'll be okay with anything else. Can you talk about some of your experiences in life that you feel have shaped who you are today? Has there been any moments where you truly felt like awakened to a new reality, or changed the way that you do things in life?
Yeah, gosh, like there's so many moments, but like one that really is close to heart is that, and I, have openly talked about this in many different forums, but, I come from a family where there's a history of mental health issues. And I remember a really close family member of mine had been diagnosed with some serious mental health, type diseases. And at the time, I remember when, like, this was a long time back, and it wasn't at a time when it was deemed okay to talk about this stuff. Like, you almost didn't know, am I going to be labeled as like, she comes from the crazy family or what? And so we didn't talk about it. But how the family had to change, how we had to come together to really manage that situation, like, just changed who I was permanently. It changed me from the perspective of, a lot of the work you do to help patients that struggle with mental health issues, it's really thankless. It's not appreciated by that person. It's not people don't know that you're going through it. And it was stressful, in addition to having like my own family and having work and dealing with all of that, and then just keeping it inside. But you learn about what it is to be part of a team, whether that's your family. And I think the way that I now am at work, like, you spend more time with the people you work with than you do with your own family, right? And that has to be meaningful. I think it has to be, you have to love the people that you're working with, but also like that sense of a team for me is like very important. That, like, what it means to truly be part of a team, have that selflessness, how you accomplish things as a team. And I learned that from that moment. I did not know what that meant. I didn't know that was what that was going to become for me until years later. But that has been like a really shaped kind of the way I am too. It's one of the things that I think is really important to talk about. And so I think I'm not worried about sharing things that, are not deemed normal. Like, I think this is what is normal, and that's what's normal for me. I think people bringing their authentic self to work is so important, but how are you going to foster that kind of environment? And I think all of that shaped that for me was that one moment, right? And seeing how the family came together to form a team, or to make sure this person can live a very normal life. And I think, to me, that's ingrained in everything now, that who I became, like what's important to me at work as well.
That's a great point that you brought up. And I know in the Asian American community, it's even less talked about, or not even thought of as something to talk about, because like, this is just how the person is, and let's not put any labels on it, or get that person help. And I had similar experiences myself growing up, and it's difficult, because if the person doesn't accept that they need help, it's hard to help someone that doesn't want to be helped. And I found that, if you can't really go to your family, then you find your own tribe and your own support system of friends, coworkers, like whomever it is, like your own tribal system that you can, so you don't feel alone, that, the people that I want to go to may not be available in the way that you want them to be. But that doesn't mean you're alone and you have to do this alone. So I think it's great that your family kind of came together for this purpose. And I'm sure all of them went through the experience, and have learned and gotten stronger and more resilient from it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. And, you realize that like you're going through a situation like that, you realize it's very normal, right? And it kind of like you recognize it when others are going through something and you just kind of try to help and make it a better environment as well.
Yeah, yeah. My next question is usually around morning rituals, but you already kind of answered that in your first question itself. Maybe I could ask, are there any other rituals that you follow for yourself? It doesn't have to be exercise related, but is there something, or maybe even boundaries that you put for yourself, especially being a leading female in cybersecurity? I know there is a lot more stress and pressure and requirements for us to maybe get positions that might be easier for other ethnicities or other, genders per se. So are there any boundaries or rituals that you kind of follow for yourself that you feel like have helped you?
I don't like not rituals, but the way I think about it, and maybe this can go in the boundaries category, is like, early when I started and I had kids, and it was like the conversation was all around work-life balance, right? And I like never could find it. And it's like, but I was okay with it. And I'm like, does that make me a bad mom, or does that make me a bad employee because I'm working at night when maybe I should be with my daughter, or, I'm deciding to be with my daughter that when I should be maybe at work. And what I learned was that it's kind of like you have to make the decision, and there's compromise. There's a little bit of compromise no matter what, right? I'm going to choose to go to this happy hour. I'm giving up an evening with my kids maybe, but that I feel good about that decision because that's meaningful to me. Or I'm going to this dance recital and that's important to me, and I'm going to give up something at work because I feel good about that compromise. And that's kind of like how I've navigated. And what's important to me has changed over time, right? Like there's certain things that stay constant, like my kids are important, but do I need to make every single dance recital? No, like I'm not going to, and I don't want to necessarily. And so that's kind of one thing I would say. The other part of it has been like the things have changed. Like I said, things that are important to me have changed, especially where I spend my extra time. And it's like, do I love doing what I'm doing with my time? Is it bringing me some kind of financial satisfaction or personal satisfaction? Am I learning from it? Am I growing from it? If not, why am I doing it? Like what? And so I'll question those things constantly and like pivot and navigate my own career and what I decide to do with my extra time. And so like, and you get more picky and choosy, right? As you get older, and as I think you grow in your career, I think you decide like, I don't really want to spend my time doing this. And, I'm not getting the joy that I want out of it. So that's kind of how I've always navigated. And I don't think it's never it never will necessarily be a perfect situation. You just have to make decisions you feel really good about.
That is so great that you said that, because I constantly struggle with the same kinds of questioning myself. Like, this is maybe a bad mom, because I have seen other moms, and kudos to them, but their life is their kids and their kids are their life. I mean, I've also seen work related folks where, their work is their life and their life is their work. And I've always felt like, well, all of these things are important to me, but none of these things define me. I'm not just this one thing, like I'm not just the mom of my kids, or I'm not just this role at my organization. And like you said, I think it's the act of coming to acceptance with what you want and being okay with that. Like, yeah, okay, well, I don't need to be there 24/7 for my kids, and I'm not responsible for every decision that they make. And some are going to be good decisions, some are going to be bad decisions, bad choices. And it's basically letting them know, like, I'm there to support you, but if there are consequences that may not come from me for bad choices that you make in your life. But it has come, I think, I feel like we've come a long way as women in this society, but especially Asian American women, because I know a lot of us have not grown up with this type of dynamics between parents and children. In our, at least in my parents' generation, it was like, you do as I say, that's about it. You don't really get an option. Your voice doesn't really matter. We just need you to make money, get out of our house, go find a husband, have kids, and then we'll help you take care of the kids. And then and that's pretty much, even if you quit working at that point, you're still successful. And this is kind of like what your life is going to look like. And, I've been known to be, I'm the only child, so I've been known to be a rebel. And yeah, I'm not really doing that. Follow my own path. And, going through being a single mom and going through a divorce is kind of like, frowned upon in the Asian American community. But it's, at some point you kind of have to look out for yourself. Like, no, this is what's best for me. And if it's best for me, it is also best for my children, for me to be the best mom. So that's great that you put it out there, because a lot of people, it's hard to be honest about that and still feel good about yourself internally as well, unless you come to the state of acceptance.
For sure. And kudos to you. Like, it's just a whole nother gig to be a single mom. So like, massive kudos to you. And I remember the days when like kids at the parents of the kids at like the school that they went to, they were like, we've never seen the kid's mom. Like, what kind of mom is she? Right. And it's like, the kind that works and has help has people that can help her to. And so the guilt for me was gone a long time ago. And it's like, you feel it and you're like, who are these people that are there to judge me? Right.
Much judgment.
I have to be happy if I want the kids to be happy.
Yes. I had, and it's also, I feel like it's important to let our children know that we are coming to their, like you mentioned, dance recitals or whatever classes, or taking them here and there. And it's a privilege. It's not something that every child has. I just came back from Orlando with my kids, and the entire time it's like, can I get this? Can I get that? And then getting all upset. I'm like, do you know how much money I spent on this trip? And do you know how much planning went into this? How much energy it took? It's not, forget about the money part, but it's like, it's not just that, oh, I have nothing else to do in my life except to entertain, your lifestyle here. And it's helping them as much as I can understand, like, you are living a very privileged lifestyle. They're about to take a trip to India next week with their dad. And I'm like, well, you're going to see a whole nother world of how people live. And hopefully that'll give you a better appreciation for what you do have in your life here. So our next question is, a lot of people fear chaos or change, but really change is the only constant in life. So, and I know being in cyber and technology, it's pretty much change on a daily basis. So are there any tricks or tips or hacks that you've learned how to navigate all the chaos and change in your life?
Yeah, things are constantly changing. And I remember, like, at one point in my career, I forget what job it was, but it was all about embracing change. But what really resonates with me is like getting ahead and leading change, right? And it's not just taking on, like, letting it impact you, but really, how do you get in the forefront? And I think you have to, in cyber, you have to enjoy that. You have to thrive in that things are constantly changing. You're constantly having to evolve. And how are you leading that? How are you the one that's kind of driving that? And it's hard because you do have to enjoy it. And I think that you have to be curious and really not feel anxious around, like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? And now I need to like manage all these things because change is happening, but rather like, man, I want to lead that change. I want to be in front of it. And so I think it's a mindset. And when you change your mindset to say that I want to lead this, it's actually really fun and you enjoy it. And everybody grows. Change is like, I think it's needed. And if that's how you grow, that's how you learn. And if you take that, to me, if that's where your headspace is in, then you're good. I think I've been in situations where you have leadership changes, and there's a sense of uncertainty that comes with that, and a little bit of, do I need to rebuild? Do I need to redo? And I think it's important to like how do I lead through it? And I, I don't want to dismiss that, there are situations where change might not be like the best situation. But you never should feel stuck. You think like, it's like change is fluid and you never need to feel stuck. Unstick yourself and figure out what you need to do to make sure that you're happy. But I think most importantly, getting in front of it and having that mindset is really important.
That's great. That's great. I mean, this usually leads to my next question of like, how do you navigate through the change and chaos every day? Like, are there any simple wellness hacks that you do throughout the day to rejuvenate yourself? And you kind of touched on that earlier, but I'm actually wondering, in the world of cybersecurity, there's always, there's a sense of urgency usually when there's an incident, especially like major incidents or breaches that tend to put you in this immediate state of chaos and panic. Are there tips? Are there any wellness hacks that you use in the moments of chaos and trying to kind of calm your nervous system down?
Yeah, I think like when there's chaos for me, there's like folks that thrive in chaos and then there are folks are, oh, like I don't want to, but if you're stuck in a situation where you have to deal with chaos, for me, I think it's how do I make sense of it first? So like what's happening? How do we get control of the situation? That's what goes through my head. And I go immediately into action mode. And it's like, you have to, if you want to organize chaos, you can't have a chaotic mind. You kind of have to be thoughtful. And I think in those moments, it's okay to slow down just a little bit and process on what's happening. Like, what's your, like, how are you going to tackle things? And I think folks feel like, oh my God, I'm getting pressure from a million different places. And it's not, you don't necessarily even have a minute where you can take a breather or meditate or do any of those things. You're expected to deliver. But I think it is okay to say, everybody, hold the phone for a sec, like back off. I need the space to figure out what's happening, to get accurate information, to be able to make sure this is contained. And you'll be surprised that in those moments of chaos, that's what people need. It's that everybody stop, like, I'm going to get you the information you need, but you need to give me some breathing room to like go figure out what's happening, because you're just adding to the chaos that already is like, we already have chaos and you're adding extra chaos to it. And it's that voice, I think, that's really important. I think a lot of times folks don't feel empowered or enabled, right? And I always tell my team too, you need to tell me when I need to back off when there's an incident. And if I'm asking too many questions that are like not hopeful in that moment, just tell me back off. I'm going to get you information in an hour and I will back off, right? So I think that is the biggest thing that you need. It's like, you don't need this added chaos. And in the moment, I think it's take that deep breath and it's getting into action mode. I think that helps a lot of times to alleviate the stress that, okay, we're doing something about it. Because it's unfair to say that, oh yeah, you should just take a step away and like take a deep, take a break, because you can't in that moment. It's just not possible. You're expected to go and like deliver on and make sure that you're communicating and being transparent about what's going on.
Yeah, that is great that you said that, because I think, as a leader, they're looking up to you. And if you say you need a moment right now, in order for you to be an effective leader, that carries a strong message across to your staff and to your organization too. Even if other leaders are kind of actively participating in the chaos, you standing up for yourself, like, okay, well, I need a moment, or let's all take a moment and just take a breather and then regroup and like even 5 minutes, that can carry forward into a a lot more effective conversation, a crucial conversation versus like a confrontation or just judgments or blaming and things like that. So that's great. I've always heard, being a leader, like you have to mimic what you would like to see in others. So it kind of starts from you. And it seems like you're doing a great job trying to mimic that behaviors you'd like to see in others as well. So being connected to technology 24/7 in the modern age, even children have basically become used to being glued to their cell phones, tablets, computers, whatever gadgets that they have. Do you have thoughts on countering the adverse effects of technology on the mind, body, and energy from obsessive use of it?
I'm like, I've made my own mistakes as a parent on this. I have like very good, like I at least feel like I have very good boundaries. Like I need to be on my phone and my devices for work. Like there's no question about it. But I have good, like I need to put it down now. I need to go to sleep. And I don't spend like excessive time on social or anything like that. I think maybe we're in like a different generation, but with my kids, I gave them like technology very, very early on. And there were really good things that came out of that, which was my daughter started her own small business on Etsy and like was selling things during COVID, doing really creative things that like is exactly what I think technology can enable. And then later came the downsides of it, which is now they're on social and care for all the likes and are posting things and that, you know, I'm like, oh gosh, like, is that really needed? And I see cyberbullying happen and all of that. And so it's taken a whole different thing. And now we've had to put boundaries where it's like, okay, you need to put your phones away like at nighttime and set different things because I see it affecting sleep and other things. So I think it's really important to one, like show what you value, like role model that to the kids. Encourage them. Like my son plays like hours a day. He's outside playing basketball and becoming like friends with the neighbors and stuff like that, which you don't see as much anymore. And I think it's important to push them to do that. Like go take a walk, like care about your health, like exercise, do things outside, take breaks from devices. You don't need to be in the house all day long. So, I don't have a perfect answer. I've made my own mistakes with this because on one hand, you want to expose your kids to technology. You want people to be exposed because it's enabling such amazing innovation, but then it has the downsides too. And I think it's really important to set boundaries for kids and then teach them to set boundaries for themselves too.
Yeah, it sounds like boundaries and then just setting a sense of balance as well. Like, you know, you can have your technology time, but then you also need to go out in nature, do something physical, just go out with friends. And it's interesting because I think when I remember when I was growing up, you know, I was outside pretty much all evening, you know, just doing something or other with the neighborhood friends or playing tennis or going to a swimming pool. And I would just come back, you know, like, okay, it's about to get dark, you know, I'm going to have to go back and finish homework and eat dinner. And now you ask the kids to go out and there's like hardly any other kids out in the neighborhood. Like, well, what do you want us to do here? I'm like, well, I don't know, throw balls at, you know, do something. And they're just looking at you like you're crazy.
I know. It's so different. And so I was like really happy because I got my son all this gaming because he was totally into video games. So I got him all this gaming, like monitor and all this stuff. And he's barely using it. Like he's outside all the time. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is actually good. Like, glad you're not using it. Like, I'm glad you're outside and you're doing that. And I think it's really important. And I think it comes from like parents too. I mean, I remember growing up, I was outside all the time too. We used to play all the time. You would get bored and you're like looking for something to do. You didn't have a device to turn to. And I remember like for at least when me growing up, like physical fitness was not like a important thing in our household and going and being active or playing sports and things like that. And so I think like just us embracing that, the kids see that, they start embedding that into their lifestyles too.
And that actually brings me, this isn't usually a topic I would ask because it's relatively new, but now that ChatGPT is out there, have you noticed any involvement that even kids are starting to use that and it really starts to question like, well, is this coming from the person or they use ChatGPT to write something? And, you know, my oldest daughter is 12 and she, you know, recently went through she was showing me a long text message from a friend of hers. And I'm like, wow, this is so well written. Like what a, you know, mature 12-year-old. And for a second, I was like, well, hold on a second. It's a little too well written. This is really coming from that person. And they, you know, they were basically asking her a question. And the moment she said, well, I'm going to have to think about this, they turn around and it's like, well, we're just kidding. And I'm like, oh, that sounds more like a 12-year-old, you know, when you don't get instant gratification, like, oh, you know, this is this could be an ego hit for me. So let me just backtrack. And it's scary for me, being a mom and being in cyber and technology. I'm like, well, how do we know who the person is on the other side, really? Because they could just be cutting and pasting anything these days from ChatGPT.
I know that part is scary. I like my kids tell me, why don't you just put that in ChatGPT? They tell me if I ask them something. And so I'm like, yeah, that's a good, maybe. And I've also like where my daughter's drafted an email that she wanted to send out. And it was written by ChatGPT, and I had to tell her, like, look, it's good to use ChatGPT for ideas and like to get, maybe like a framework, but now that sounds not authentic. And so you're going to send this thing that looks like it's been written by like some automated thing. And so but instead, why don't you take some of the elements you like, but make it your own, or do your own thing. Like, just don't use it. So I think it's, yes, use these things as resources, but don't necessarily copy and paste and be lazy, right? So like, I think the creativity piece of it is like so important. And yes, if this is going to drive efficiency or give you ideas, great, but like, you still, that you need to be creative, you need to have your own authenticity. And I think giving them that feedback early on, right? So they don't use this for like stupid things as they get older.
It's I'm not sure how schools are going to be dealing with that when it comes to writing essays and narratives like we had to do before.
Yeah.
So is there anything you would offer our younger generation to empower them to prioritize their self-care, self-worth and their wellness, no matter what field they go into?
Yeah, I think one is always like, it's really important to find time for yourself and be healthy, both your physical state and your mental state. It's so important. And it's important to recognize when that's not the case, and do what it is that you need to do. That might mean what we talked about, taking breaks. It might mean exercising. It might even mean that you need to get a therapist, or you need to go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, whatever it is. Recognize that there's no taboo to any of that at all, right? And if you have a trusted circle, obviously talk to them, but I think more importantly, seek the help you need. And then on the other side of it, like, be curious about things. I think it's really important. I think that is what helps you grow. And I think that if you're curious, you'll always take a step back to learn and to think about things in a different way. And those are the two things I would say. And a lot of us, like me, at least, I took the time to be physically fit and mentally fit much later. And so I think it's really important that we do it as early as possible. It'll make you kind of, it'll help you with everything you do.
Great points. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Rinki. Can you please tell the audience where they can find you if they would like to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. So you can find me in all places, Rinki Sethi, and you'll find me at any of those.
All right. Any last words of wisdom before we close out to the IT community over here?
No, thank you so much, Jothi, for having me and for having this important platform as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for listening. We will have the links to the podcast as well as all of Rinki's information, and see you all every third Wednesday of the month to focus on your wellness and leading your life from within.